The city of Chicago was waking up to another freezing morning. The air was sharp, the kind that bit at the skin, and snowflakes drifted lazily from the gray sky. Cars rolled slowly through icy streets, their headlights cutting through the mist. People hurried along the sidewalks, their faces hidden behind scarves, rushing to escape the cold. Among them was Emma Carter, a 27-year-old nurse who had just finished a long night shift. Her body felt heavy, her eyes dry and tired, but she walked fast, clutching her coat tighter around her shoulders. She dreamed of only two things: a hot cup of coffee and her warm bed. As she turned the corner near Lakeside Cafe, she noticed something that made her stop. A man sat on the sidewalk near the cafe's glass door, shivering. His clothes were torn, his shoes were wet, and his beard was full of snowflakes. He had a small cardboard sign beside him that said, "Hungry. Please help." People passed by him as if he didn't exist. Some turned their heads away, others glanced for a second, then looked down at their phones. The man didn't ask anyone for money. He just sat quietly, hugging himself for warmth. His lips trembled, and his eyes looked empty, the kind of emptiness that comes from losing too much for too long. Emma slowed down. Her heart began to ache in a way she couldn't explain. She thought, I should help him. But then another voice in her head said, "You're tired. You've worked all night. Someone else will help him." She stood there for a few seconds, torn between compassion and exhaustion. Snowflakes landed gently on her hair as she watched the man. Something inside her wouldn't let her walk away. Finally, she took a deep breath and stepped closer. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly. The man looked up slowly. His face was pale, and his eyes were tired but kind. "I'll be fine, ma'am," he said in a hoarse voice. "Just need some warmth. It's been a rough week." Emma noticed his hands shaking. She could see how hungry and weak he was. "Do you have anywhere to go?" she asked. He gave a faint smile that carried deep sadness. "No, not really. I used to work at a factory. Lost my job when it closed down. Things went bad from there." Emma nodded quietly. She didn't know what to say. The wind blew harder, and she could see him trying to keep warm with a thin jacket that was more holes than fabric. She felt something shift inside her. She had seen patients suffering before: pain, fear, sickness, but this was different. This was the kind of suffering people walked past every day without seeing. "Wait here," she said gently. "I'll be right back." Emma walked into the cafe. The warm air hit her face as the smell of roasted coffee filled the room. The line was long, and people were talking about work, meetings, and weather, unaware of the man outside fighting for warmth. When it was her turn, she ordered 2 large coffees and a breakfast sandwich. The cashier gave her a strange look when she said, "Can you make one extra hot, please? It's for someone outside." Carrying the steaming cups, she stepped back into the cold. The man was still there, shivering. She knelt beside him and handed him the coffee and sandwich. "Here," she said with a kind smile. "Drink this. It'll help." He looked surprised, his eyes filling with tears. "You didn't have to do that," he whispered. "Thank you." Emma shook her head. "It's okay. Everyone deserves a warm meal." For a few minutes, they sat together in silence. The man took small sips of coffee, his hands still shaking. Slowly, color returned to his face. After a while, he said quietly, "My name's David Miller. I used to work at a metal factory before it shut down last year. After that, I lost my apartment, then my car. Everything went downhill. I've been sleeping outside for 3 weeks now." Emma listened carefully. His voice carried both pain and dignity. He wasn't begging, he was just sharing his story. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "That must have been really hard." He nodded. "It's strange. When you lose everything, people stop seeing you. You become invisible." Those words hit Emma deeply. She looked around, people were still walking by, not even glancing their way. She felt anger rise inside her, not at them, but at how easy it was for the world to stop caring. Before leaving, Emma took off her wool scarf and wrapped it gently around David's neck. "Keep this," she said. "It's warmer than it looks." He tried to protest. "No, you'll need it." She smiled. "I'll be fine. Promise." Then she added, "Come here tomorrow morning, okay? I'll check on you." David looked at her as if he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. You'll really come back? I will, Emma said, standing up. Take care of yourself tonight. As she walked away, the snow kept falling, covering her footprints. She didn't know why she made that promise, but deep down, she felt it was the right thing to do. That night, lying in bed, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the man with tired eyes and a gentle voice. She had helped many people as a nurse, but this felt different. Something about David's loneliness stayed in her heart. She didn't know it yet, but that small moment of kindness on a cold morning would soon change both of their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. The next morning, the snow had turned to slush on the Chicago streets. The wind was softer, but the air still carried that sharp winter bite. People rushed to work as usual, same streets, same silence, same faces behind scarves. Emma Carter stood in front of the mirror, getting ready for another long shift at the hospital. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was restless. All night, she had kept thinking about the man she met yesterday, David Miller. His face, his trembling hands, his soft thank you kept echoing in her head. She had seen suffering before in hospital rooms, in dying patients, but David's pain had a different weight. It wasn't just physical. It was the pain of being forgotten. She grabbed her coat, wrapped a new scarf around her neck, and packed a small paper bag. Inside were 2 sandwiches, a pair of wool gloves, and a thermos of hot coffee. As she stepped outside, the cold air brushed her face, but she walked faster this time, not because she was in a hurry to get to work, but because she hoped David would still be there. When she turned the corner near Lakeside Cafe, her eyes scanned the sidewalk. For a second, she feared he might be gone. Then she saw him sitting in the same spot, still wrapped in her old scarf. He looked up as she approached, and a small, surprised smile appeared on his face. You came back, he said quietly. Of course, she replied. I told you I would. She handed him the paper bag. It's not much, but it's warm. David opened it carefully, like it was something precious. You didn't have to do this again, he murmured. Emma sat down beside him, ignoring the curious looks from people passing by. You said you worked at a factory, she asked. Yeah, David nodded slowly. For almost 15 years. It was good work. Hard, but honest. Then they closed it down, said machines were cheaper. He gave a small, bitter laugh. I thought I'd find another job soon. But months turned into years. I lost everything. Emma listened quietly. She didn't interrupt or judge. Sometimes, silence speaks more than words. After a moment, she said softly, you know, my father used to say that bad times don't last forever. Maybe things can still change. David looked down at his hands. Maybe for others. But not for people like me. Emma shook her head gently. That's not true. You just need someone to believe in you again. For a few minutes, they just sat there, sipping coffee and watching people go by. The city seemed to move around them, busy, cold, and unaware, but in that small corner, warmth existed. As Emma stood to leave for work, she looked at him and said, come here again tomorrow, okay? I'll try to find a way to help you. David's eyes widened. Help me how? I don't know yet, she admitted honestly. But I'll figure something out. When she walked away, David sat still for a long time, holding the thermos tightly in his hands. He couldn't remember the last time someone had made him a promise and kept it. That evening, after her shift ended, Emma sat in the hospital cafeteria, thinking deeply. She had seen so many patients recover from impossible conditions, why couldn't someone recover from life's struggles, too? She pulled out her phone and started searching for local shelters and community programs that helped homeless people. Most were full or had waiting lists, but she didn't stop calling. Finally, she found one, a Haven Center, a small organization that helped people find temporary housing and jobs. The woman on the phone said, if your friend can come by tomorrow morning, we might have a bed and job counseling open. Emma smiled. Thank you. He'll be there. The next morning, she arrived early at the cafe with excitement and hope. David was already waiting, standing this time, looking cleaner than before. Someone must have given him a blanket during the night. Morning, he said with a faint smile. Didn't think I'd be looking forward to coffee so much. Emma laughed. Good, because today's coffee comes with a plan. He looked curious. A plan. She handed him a small paper note. It's an address. They help people get back on their feet. Housing, food, jobs. I called them for you. They're expecting you today. David stared at the paper as if it were a ticket to another world. You, you did this for me. Why not, she said simply. Everyone deserves a second chance. He was speechless for a moment. You don't even know me. Emma smiled kindly. Maybe that's the point. He nodded slowly, holding the paper like it was something fragile. I'll go, he said finally. I'll go today. Good, she said. And if they need any references, tell them to call the hospital. I'll vouch for you. For the first time in months, David's eyes shone with hope. Thank you, Emma. You have no idea what this means. As she walked to the hospital, she glanced back once. He was still standing there, looking at the paper and smiling softly as if life had just handed him a small piece of light after years of darkness. That night, Emma sat by her window, sipping tea and watching the snow fall again. The city lights glowed softly through the mist. She didn't know if David would really go to the shelter. But deep down, she hoped he would. She had done what she could. And sometimes, that was enough to start a miracle. The next morning, the city woke up under a pale winter sun. The snow had stopped falling, and the air smelled clean, as if something new was beginning. At the lakeside cafe, Emma looked around the corner with quiet hope. She had come again before her hospital shift, holding 2 coffees in her hands. She wasn't sure if David would show up. A part of her feared he might have lost faith overnight. But when she saw him walking slowly toward her, bundled in his old coat and her scarf, she smiled with relief. You made it, she said warmly. Yeah, David replied, catching his breath. Didn't want to miss my favorite nurse's coffee. Emma laughed softly and handed him the cup. Are you ready for the shelter? It's not far. I can walk with you if you like. David hesitated, his fingers curling around the coffee cup. I'm nervous, he admitted. What if they don't want someone like me? Then they'll have to deal with me, Emma said firmly. Come on, David. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. Together, they walked through quiet streets until they reached a small brick building with a blue sign that read The Haven Center. The windows glowed warmly, and the faint smell of soup drifted through the door. Inside, a woman at the reception smiled kindly. Good morning. How can we help? Emma stepped forward. This is David Miller. I called yesterday. You said there might be a bed available. The woman checked her list and nodded. Yes, we do. Your lucky one just opened up. David's eyes widened slightly. Really? Yes, she said, handing him a clipboard. We'll need you to fill out a few details, and then we can get you settled. David looked at the paper, overwhelmed. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to write. Emma noticed and placed her hand gently on his arm. Take your time, she whispered. You're doing great. After a few minutes, David was shown to a small room with a single bed, a blanket, and a lamp. It wasn't much, but to him, it felt like heaven. As he sat on the edge of the bed, he whispered, I haven't slept in a real bed in months. Emma smiled softly. Now you have one. And soon, you'll have more. That day, she left him with a promise to visit again soon. Over the next few weeks, David started attending counseling and job workshops at the shelter. It wasn't easy. Some days, he wanted to give up. The world still felt heavy, and the memories of his old life haunted him. But every time he felt hopeless, he remembered Emma's words, you just need someone to believe in you again. She visited him often, sometimes before her shifts, sometimes after. They would sit in the shelter cafeteria, sharing sandwiches and stories. Emma learned that David used to love music. He had played guitar in his younger days before life became too hard. One evening, she surprised him by bringing an old guitar she found at a thrift store. He stared at it, speechless. You got this, for me? Yep, she smiled. You said music helped you once. Maybe it can help again. He touched the strings softly. I don't remember the last time I played. Then today's the day to remember, she said gently. As his fingers strummed the strings, a soft tune filled the room. It was rough but beautiful. The other people in the shelter turned to listen. For a few minutes, everyone smiled. The sound of hope had returned. A month later, David was offered a small job cleaning floors and emptying trash bins at the City General Hospital, the same place where Emma worked. When he told her the news, she almost cried. "That's amazing, David. You did it?" He grinned shyly. "No, we did it. You didn't give up on me." Emma shook her head. "You earned this. I just reminded you that you could." His first day at the hospital was difficult. Some staff members looked at him with suspicion. They didn't know his story, only his past. But Emma always greeted him with a smile, and soon, others followed her lead. David worked hard, harder than anyone expected. He showed up early, stayed late, and made sure every floor shined. Slowly, the whispers stopped, and respect replaced them. One evening, as he finished mopping the hallway, Emma walked by. "Long day?" she asked. He nodded, smiling. "Yeah, but a good one. Feels nice to be part of something again." She smiled back. "You are. You always were. You just needed a place to start." That night, when David returned to the shelter, he looked at himself in the small mirror above his bed. His face still carried lines of struggle, but now his eyes had the light of purpose. He thought about the first day Emma had stopped on the sidewalk. If she had walked past him, his story might have ended there. But she hadn't. He picked up his guitar, strummed softly, and whispered to himself. "One act of kindness, that's all it takes." The next morning, Emma received a small note at the hospital front desk. It was from David. It said, "Thank you for giving me back my life. I'm not invisible anymore." Emma folded the note carefully and slipped it into her pocket. She didn't need a reward, just the quiet joy of knowing she'd made a difference. For her, kindness wasn't a duty. It was a choice, one that had the power to change everything. Spring had arrived in Chicago. The snow was gone, replaced by soft sunshine and blooming trees. People no longer hurried through the streets, and the air carried a touch of warmth and renewal. For David Miller, life finally felt like it had meaning again. It had been 4 months since he started working at City General Hospital, the same hospital where Emma Carter worked as a nurse. His job was simple: cleaning floors, wiping windows, keeping the place shining, but to him, it was more than a job. It was a second chance at life. Every morning, he arrived early, wearing his blue uniform and a smile. The same people who once ignored him now greeted him with nods and "Good morning, David." Some even stopped to talk, asking how his day was going. Small things, but they mattered. Emma often saw him in the hallways and couldn't help but smile every time. The man she had once found cold and hungry on a snowy street now stood tall, proud, and full of quiet confidence. One afternoon, while David was cleaning near the cafeteria, he noticed an older woman sitting alone at a table. Her food tray was untouched, and her eyes were red. Something about her reminded him of his lowest days, that same loneliness, that same silent pain. He hesitated for a moment, then walked over and said softly, "Ma'am, are you okay?" She looked up, startled. "Oh, I'm fine. Just waiting for my test results." David nodded. "Hospitals can be scary. But you're in good hands here. The nurses are amazing." The woman gave a weak smile. "I hope so. My daughter couldn't come today. I feel so alone." Without thinking, David said, "Would you like some coffee? I can grab you one from the cafeteria. It's not much, but it helps." The woman looked surprised but nodded. "That would be nice. Thank you." A few minutes later, he returned with 2 cups of coffee and sat beside her. They talked for a while about the weather, about her daughter, about life. When Emma passed by and saw them talking, she stopped quietly. It was David, now showing the same kindness she had once shown him. She didn't interrupt, she just smiled and walked away. It was the most beautiful thing she had seen all week. As the weeks passed, David began helping others in small ways. He started bringing extra sandwiches to work, giving them to homeless people he passed on his way to the hospital. When one of the janitors got sick, David covered his shifts without complaining. When a new worker joined and struggled with the job, David patiently taught him the ropes. One day, the hospital supervisor called him in. "David, I've been watching your work," she said. "You're not just cleaning floors, you're changing the atmosphere here. Everyone says your positivity makes the day better." David smiled shyly. I'm just doing what I can, ma'am. I got a second chance. I guess I want to give others one too. She nodded, impressed. Well, you've earned a promotion, assistant supervisor. You'll be helping train the new staff from next week. For a moment, David couldn't speak. A year ago, he didn't even have a bed to sleep on. Now, he was being promoted. His eyes filled with tears as he said softly, "Thank you. I won't let you down." That evening, he met Emma outside the hospital. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. "Guess what?" he said, grinning. "What?" she asked. "I got promoted." Emma gasped and clapped her hands. "David. That's incredible. I'm so proud of you." He smiled. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you." She shook her head gently. "No, David. You did this. You're the one who kept trying." He looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, "You know what I realized? Kindness is like a circle. You gave it to me, and now I feel like it's my turn to keep it moving." Emma's eyes softened. "That's the most beautiful thing I've heard all day." Word of David's story started spreading quietly around the hospital. Nurses, doctors, and staff began talking about how one act of kindness had transformed a man's life. Inspired by him, others started doing small acts of kindness, too. A nurse brought extra food for patients who had no family. A doctor started volunteering at a local shelter once a week. Even the hospital cafeteria began donating leftover food to those in need. It was as if David's gratitude had created a ripple spreading outward, touching everyone who crossed his path. Emma watched it all happen and felt something deep inside her heart. She realized that kindness doesn't end when you help someone, it continues, multiplying through others. One day, David stopped her in the hallway and handed her a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," he said. She opened it and saw a simple drawing: a small cup of coffee surrounded by ripples spreading outward, like waves. Underneath, he had written, "It started with one cup." Emma laughed through her tears. "You really have a way with words, don't you?" He smiled. "Not words, just gratitude." That night, as Emma walked home, she looked at the busy city around her, the lights, the noise, the people hurrying by. Somewhere out there, more stories like David's were waiting to happen. All it took was someone willing to stop, notice, and care. And she promised herself that no matter how tired or busy she was, she would always choose kindness, because she now knew it could change more than just one life. It could change the world, one small act at a time. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's life began to change in beautiful ways she never expected. The kindness she had shown to Daniel didn't just change his life, it had started a ripple that touched many others. Daniel, now clean, healthy, and full of energy, began working at a local youth center. He used his story to help kids who were lost, scared, or struggling with life. Every time he spoke, his voice carried the same message that had saved him: one act of kindness can change everything. Emily often visited the center. She watched him talk to the kids, and it filled her heart with quiet pride. She never wanted recognition; seeing Daniel smile again was enough. He had become a symbol of hope, proof that people could heal if given a chance. One afternoon, Emily received a letter in her mailbox. It had Daniel's neat handwriting on the front. When she opened it, she found a handwritten note. "Dear Emily, I wanted you to know that I got accepted into the community college. I'm going to study social work because I want to do for others what you did for me. I still remember the sandwich you handed me that day. It was more than food, it was the first time in years someone treated me like I mattered. Thank you for seeing the good in me when I couldn't see it myself. With love and gratitude, Daniel." Emily sat on her couch, tears filling her eyes. The letter trembled in her hands. She smiled, whispering softly, "You did it, Daniel." That night, she went for a walk through the same park where it had all begun. The city lights shimmered in the distance. She passed the bench where Daniel used to sit. It was empty now, but she could almost see him there, the man she had once found cold, hungry, and forgotten. She sat down for a moment, feeling the cool wind on her face. She thought about how simple her action had been, a small moment of compassion. Yet it had transformed not just one life, but many. A young woman with a baby stroller walked by and dropped a toy. Emily picked it up and handed it back with a smile. The woman smiled too, saying, "Thank you." Emily watched her go and whispered, "Kindness never stops." The next morning, she decided to write about her experience in her personal blog. She titled it "She Chose Kindness and Changed a Life Forever." She wrote about that rainy day, about Daniel, and about what she learned that the smallest good deed can plant the biggest seed of hope. Her post went viral within days. Thousands of people shared it, commenting how it reminded them to be kind. Some shared their own stories of helping strangers, of forgiveness, of second chances. Messages poured in from all over the country. "This story made me call my mom after years. I bought a meal for a homeless man today. Thank you for reminding me to care. Your story made me believe in goodness again." Emily was stunned. She hadn't done it for fame. But seeing so many people inspired made her realize something profound, that kindness is contagious. One heart touches another, and the chain never ends. A few months later, the youth center hosted a charity event. Daniel was invited to speak, and he insisted that Emily come too. She sat quietly in the front row, her heart full. When Daniel stepped up to the microphone, he looked calm and confident. His voice carried warmth and gratitude as he said, "I was once lost. I didn't think I deserved love or a second chance. But one woman saw me, really saw me. She didn't judge, didn't turn away. She gave me food, warmth, and hope. That one act changed everything. Because of her, I'm here today, trying to do the same for others." The audience applauded, some even wiping tears. Daniel looked toward Emily, his eyes soft. "Thank you, Emily," he said. Emily smiled through her tears. It wasn't pride she felt, it was peace. When the event ended, Daniel introduced her to the people he worked with. They hugged, laughed, and took pictures together. Emily realized then that kindness doesn't end when the moment passes, it continues to grow, spreading through lives in unseen ways. Later, as she walked home under the evening sky, she looked up and whispered to herself, "We can't fix the whole world. But we can make one life better. And sometimes, that's enough." The wind carried her words softly through the quiet street. Somewhere, another stranger might have been watching, needing a sign, needing hope. And maybe, just maybe, Emily's story would remind them that kindness is never wasted. Because in the end, she didn't just change Daniel's life. She changed the world, one small act of kindness at a time.